Good morning and a very warm welcome. You're watching the Breakfast Rundown on TV1. I'm Therunee Karunaratne. We're coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Well, the vote on account for the first 4 months of the financial year 2025 was tabled in Parliament yesterday, and the debate of that vote on account continues for the second day today. We have details of this story as well as several other key local stories. And as far as international news is concerned, this morning we have more developments coming in from France as well as South Korea. And both these stories we have been very closely following right here on the Breakfast Rundown. Stay tuned with us. We have all the news in detail. Let's first move on to our top local story for this morning. The parliamentary debate on the vote of account for the first 4 months of 2025 continues for the second day today. This vote on account, which outlines the government's essential expenditure management and ensures uninterrupted debt servicing, was presented in Parliament yesterday. The total estimated amount for this vote on account is 2.6 trillion rupees. For the first 4 months of 2025, the government has allocated 1 trillion rupees for recurrent expenditures. 425 billion rupees have been allocated for capital expenditures. A total of 1.175 trillion rupees has been earmarked for debt servicing, including provisions for debt restructuring. To maintain government operations and continue ongoing projects without disruption, an allocation of 1.402 trillion rupees has been allocated. The highest allocation in this vote on account is for the Ministry of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation, which has been allocated 220 billion rupees. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has been allocated 186 billion rupees. The Ministry of Public Administration, Provincial Councils and Local Government has been allocated 170 billion rupees. The Ministry of Defence has been allocated 0.142 trillion rupees, and the Ministry of Health and Media has been allocated 161 billion rupees. The Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Livestock and Irrigation has been allocated 67 billion rupees. The Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education has been allocated 92 billion rupees. The Ministry of Power and Energy has been allocated 43 billion rupees, and the Ministry of Digital Economy has been allocated 37 billion rupees. Now 26 billion rupees has been allocated for the expenses of the President for the first 4 months of the financial year 2025. Let's move on to more local news now. The Public Health Inspectors Association of Sri Lanka says that 2,000 officers have been deployed nationwide for special raids during the upcoming festive season. The Secretary of the Public Health Inspectors Association, Chamil Muthukudu, said that these raids are mainly focusing on inspecting restaurants as well as prepared food. He noted that along with the recent heavy rainfall experienced in the country, there have been several issues related to food as well as beverage hygiene, which have led to the detection of several foodborne diseases. The government has decided to obtain specialized knowledge from the Cuban health authorities to eradicate the rising trend of dengue fever in the country. This decision came after a special meeting held at the Ministry of Health between the Cuban ambassador to Sri Lanka as well as local health officials. During the meeting, the ambassador emphasized the successful measures taken by the Cuban government to control dengue fever and also stated that Cuba would provide its maximum cooperation to help eliminate dengue in Sri Lanka. The Cuban government's aim is to offer relevant expertise and knowledge to improve public health programs in Sri Lanka. Several methods used to control dengue breeding were also introduced during these discussions that were held between the ambassador and Sri Lankan health officials. The meeting was attended by key health officials, including the Acting Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Vatsala Priyadarshini, the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Asela Gunawardana, Chief Epidemiologist, Dr. Hasitha Thisera, and the Director of the National Dengue Control Unit of Sri Lanka, Dr. Sudat Samaravira. So far, 23 deaths due to dengue have been reported in Sri Lanka, and the total number of dengue cases reported nationwide stands at 45,959. Now in more local news, the governor of the Central Province, Senior Professor Sarat Bandara Abekon, says that approximately 2 billion rupees will be spent to renovate homes as well as areas affected by the heavy rainfall experienced in the region. He added that cost reports related to this will be submitted to the government for further consideration. The governor further explained that the last group of people who were displaced due to adverse weather conditions have now moved away from the Kalabukka area. Meanwhile, the owners of the relevant plantation lands in the Central Province have decided to provide their land to accommodate those displaced by the disaster conditions that arose as a result of this adverse weather that was experienced over the past week. Private estate owners plan to hand over these lands to the government and later on provide the displaced individuals with 10 purchases of land each. However, the government has allocated 1.6 million rupees each to assist those who have lost their homes due to the recent adverse weather conditions. Let's move on to your weather update for this morning. The weather forecast, rather. The Department of Meteorology says that there may be several spells of showers in the northern and eastern provinces of the country today. The Department of Meteorology says that in the western, Sabaragamuwa and southern provinces, as well as in the districts of Nuwara Eliya, Kandy, Gaul and Matara, there may be showers or thunder showers during the evening or night. The Department of Meteorology adds that misty conditions could prevail during the morning hours in many parts of the island. Let's move on to news overseas now. Over the past few days, we've been following the situation in France, how the speaker was ousted by an overwhelming majority after a no-confidence motion was brought in Parliament. Today, we have our first international story coming in from France, the latest development in this regard. French President Emmanuel Macron said he will name a new prime minister in the coming days after Michel Barnier resigned following a no-confidence vote in Parliament. In a 10-minute address to the nation on Thursday, he rejected opposition pressure to stand down, vowing to stay in his post fully until the end of the mandate in the year 2027. He thanked Barnier for his dedication during his brief term as Prime Minister and accused the French far-right and hard-left of collaborating in an anti-republican front to bring down their government. French parliamentarians voted overwhelmingly to remove Barnier on Wednesday, just 3 months after he was appointed by Macron as Prime Minister of France. The vote was the first time in a French government had been voted down by Parliament in more than 60 years, a move Macron labelled as unprecedented. In response, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the far-right National Rally or RN, posted on social media, quote, "A little reminder to President Macron, who is supposed to be the guarantor of the Constitution, censure is not anti-republican. It is provided for in the Constitution of our Fifth Republic," unquote. The no-confidence vote that toppled Barnier's leadership had been tabled by both the New Popular Front left-wing alliance and Le Pen's RN. They united to censure the government after former Brexit negotiator used special powers to force through his budget without a vote in the Parliament of France. A total of 331 parliamentarians voted in support of this motion against Barnier, while 288 required it for to pass. Barnier resigned on Thursday and the budget was automatically withdrawn. He will remain in office on the caretaker basis with his ministers until a new government is appointed in the country. Macron's role is unaffected by this no-confidence motion and its result. Macron has been heavily criticized for deciding to call snap elections in July, creating a deadlock in Parliament and an escalating political crisis in the European nation. Our second international item for this morning is coming in from France. As we know, there was quite a situation in France as the martial law was imposed by the President Yoon Suk Yeol, and later on the defense minister resigned from his position after fully admitting to have urged the president to impose the martial law in the country. This was heavily criticized within the country as well as across the world. Now, two U.S. officials told foreign media that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin no longer plans to travel to South Korea, following South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's botched attempt this week to impose the martial law in the country. One official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said planning had been underway for a trip in the near term, but it was determined that now was not the appropriate time for this visit. The official said South Korea had been consulted regarding the change in these travel plans. Austin will leave office by the 20th of January when President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated as the President of the United States of America. Yoon's declaration of martial law late on Tuesday sought to consolidate power, ban political activity as well as censor media in South Korea. It sparked outrage in the streets and concern among South Korea's international allies. South Korea's defense minister, who recommended the move, has resigned. Fighting for his political future, Yoon accepted the resignation of Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun on Thursday and nominated his ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Choi Byung-hook, as his replacement. Now, according to the Interior Minister, Kim had recommended Yoon to declare the martial law on Tuesday. A senior military official and the opposition's filing to impeach Yoon. The United States has 28,500 troops stationed in South Korea as a legacy of the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. Well, that's a wrap of this morning's edition of the Breakfast Rundown. I'm Therunee Karunaratne. Today is Friday. Tomorrow marks the start of a weekend. So I'll see you once again on Monday right here on TV1 at 7 a.m. Until then, take care. Have a wonderful weekend ahead.